Thank you for staying with us on Prime Morning. This is Beyond the Headlines with me, Benjamin Akakpo. Now, at this, in this segment, we're going to be talking about the road crashes, the carnage on our roads, and what to do moving forward. It's become very problematic, and the key numbers to take stock of: 2,126 lives lost between January and September. And when you break it down, it actually implies that with every crash, more than 5 lives are lost. We started the year, we saw the dynamics, and we said that we're going to do things about it. The MTTD, DVLA, NRSA, and, well, other bodies. But it appears that has not panned out. Joining us for the conversation this morning, Henry Asomani. He is Senior Manager Planning and Programs with the National Road Safety Authority. Mr. Asomani, a very good morning to you, sir.
Good morning, sir.
I wish I could actually hear you better. Can you hear me, Mr. Asomani?
Yes, please. Good morning.
Great. Thank you so much for joining the conversation. And I'll ask you a question that we've posed time without number, but maybe we still need to go back to it. How did we get here? We've tried this year. We've put in the mechanisms. I mean, here at the Multimedia Group, we have the Drive Safe campaign. We've partnered you. We've done so many things from the Roads Ministry, and nothing appears to be working. Why are we here?
Good morning, and good morning to our viewers and listeners. Thank you very much for this conversation. At this moment, this has become one of the priorities of the country because it is something that is not good. Now, if you are moving from your house, you are afraid something might happen to you because of the numbers. It is true that, yes, Joy Multimedia and other media stations have partnered the National Road Safety Authority and then the Ministry of Transport to create a lot of awareness, as you just mentioned with your Drive Safe campaign,
right,
and then other campaigns at other media stations. A lot of awareness has been created. And sometimes your mindset is that when these awareness are created, people come to realize in their senses of what not to do on the roads and what to do to stay safe on the roads. But you would also agree with me that there's a saying, a Chinese proverb that says that education without enforcement is entertainment. So I think that the awareness has been created. People are aware of road safety. People are aware of what the do's and don'ts of the roads, on the roads. But to change attitudes, we need to crack the whip. And this is where we need a lot of enforcement. And I know from the police end, they are trying to come up with a mechanism that would enhance their enforcement. That is the automation of the MTTD activities.
Right.
So, and then also as the authority, we are also trying to come with some force of compliance when people are supposed to comply with some of the regulations on our roads. The ministry...
Which regulations, if you can maybe specify? When you say some of the regulations, I mean, I'm sure you've contemplated which ones.
I just want to give an overview first, and I'll go into detail.
Sure.
Okay, thank you. So, and then the ministry, being a supervising ministry, have also seen that there are some regulations that need to be enhanced. There are some regulations that need to be changed so that it will make it easier for enforcement. And that is why yesterday the Ministry of Transport hosted the public in a public forum on the LI 2180, where they earmarked some of the areas that we, the public, have asked them that if we could change or enhance, then it could help in the fight against road traffic crashes. Now, as the authority, currently, some of the regulations, you realize that if you go into the statistics, you go into details of these statistics, you realize that most of the crashes happen on our highways at dawn.
Correct.
Or in the middle of the night. One of the main causes of such crashes, we have realized, is visibility. I don't know if you have ever driven on a highway in the night before. You will see some people with certain types of light that would blur your vision to the extent that you cannot see your way because they have lights that are unprescribed. You know, when you go into the LI regulation 65, talks about lamps that you can use on the road.
Exactly so.
Yes. So these lamps, when you go into it, it has specifications. But sometimes you see a vehicle with the lamps as high as the top of the roof, which is it's illegal because it shouldn't be there.
Right.
Such lights, when they throw it on you in the night, you realize that it will blur your vision because it will come directly at you. Even if you look at the what we did yesterday, the ministry is leading the review of the regulation. Now, maybe if there was when you look at the law, it didn't specify the lumen that you should use. The minimum and maximum.
That is so the luminosity, right? The luminosity of whatever lamp you're using.
Yes. One of the review items is bringing the lumen. So now the low beam should not be more than 700 lumen, and the high beam should not be more than 1,200 lumen if this review goes through Parliament and it is passed.
Right.
But before it is even passed, the law says that you cannot put a headlight on top of the roof. You cannot put any light above the headlight of your vehicle. And then also it specifies where you can place your fog light. It should be some meters from the floor under the headlight. So this is an exercise where the authority has decided to ensure compliance with. So our road safety inspectors are on the roads where they are checking these lamps. If you have these lamps, if they are removed, and I can't testify and tell you, I'm sure you have seen some of our men on the roads where they are doing this. And with time, we think that we will be able to get as many as possible of these lamps removed. It's some safety net on the roads, especially in the night in Adon.
It's interesting you mentioned this. I was interacting with Cecil Gabra of Top Tech and Logistics, and he made mention of this very matter that you speak of. I'm just wondering, though, before I get back to a point you made earlier, I'm just wondering, how many of these do you feel you can apprehend, take off the vehicles? Like you said, the trucks. In fact, last night, I was driving deep into the night, similar situations, and they are creating accidents day in and day out. I do know that, like you mentioned, Regulation 65 of LI 2180 has its own specifications. Right before the end of the month of September, we had the MTTD come out with that statement about the end of September and the LI kicking into force and all of that, people using unregulated lights and all of that. But do you feel this is the proper approach? Finding the people on the road and taking them off? I mean, aren't there alternatives to prevent them from even using them at all?
Thank you very much. It's not just one approach. This one approach I just want to share with the public because people will see them.
Right.
But then, what is also happening is if you go to road DVLA, it is a collaboration between the DVLA, ourselves, and the police.
Right.
If you go to DVLA to go and do your roadworthiness, if you have these lamps on, they won't be removed. But what we realized was some people remove these lamps and go to DVLA for the roadworthy certification. And when they come back onto the road, now they bring these lamps back. So on the road, if they see you, these lamps are taken and they are not given back to you. They are seized by the police.
Right.
So what this is do? It is, when you want to start any exercise, you first sensitize people. We have done the sensitization, and this is just to let people know that we are serious about it. So that if you have, let's say if you have it on your vehicle and you have heard that we are removing other people's own on the roads, I'm sure it would push you to remove yours, because if you come and meet us on the road, it will be seized. So it will push you to remove yours. So although we know that the numbers, we are not getting all the numbers, we think that it will send a signal to people who have it, such that they, upon their own volition, will remove these before they come onto the roads. I don't know if you get me.
I am getting exactly what you're saying. But beyond this, taking these accoutrements, if you like, off the vehicles, are there punitive measures? I mean, are there punitive measures so that if you're found...
For now, we are still in the sensitization mode.
Right.
So at this stage, we are not prosecuting anybody yet.
Okay.
But when this thing ends and people still have it, now we enter the prosecution mode. Because now, as I said, we are doing sensitization. Now we just remove them, seize them, and you go on.
Okay.
But with time, now we will stop you impound the vehicles, prosecute you, and ensure that you remove these and they are destroyed before, and you pay a fine. If it's a fine, you pay. You pay if you have to go to jail for a number of days. You do that, then you are released, and then you go back. But for now, we are in the sensitization mode. That is why you find no prosecution in that line.
Okay, so you say with time. Do you have any idea? I mean, are we looking at by close of year moving forward?
Yes,
I know you are not with
sensitization from now to close of year. From January, there will be prosecution. And we also expect that by January, a lot of vehicles would have gone through roadway certification at the DVLA, where they would have removed these by voluntarily. And we expect that when they know that we are on the roads doing this, they won't put them back on their vehicles.
Now, another crucial, angle to consider, especially as you're with the National Road Safety Authority, has to do with our roads themselves and how dangerous some of those stretches have become. What is the take of the NRSA on this matter in terms of bettering our roads? I mean, we're still in the second year of roads, the year of roads. But it appears that on many stretches, the roads are still very bad, up north, down south, and we still see an increasing number of accidents. What would you say is the gear that the NRSA is hoping to shift to before close of year to maybe decrease the numbers when it comes to those dying on our roads?
Okay, thank you very much. But before I go directly into speaking about what you have just mentioned, I would want to urge everybody, when you enter this one now, I'm talking to road users. When you go, when they say safety starts with you. You should not allow the environment around you to make you get involved in an accident. And that is why we at the driving instructor, whenever you go through a driving course, we tell you that you should not get involved in an accident despite the environment you find yourself in and despite the actions of others. Now let me go to specifically what you are talking about. If you look at the authority and its stakeholders, you realize that when it comes to the management of road safety, there's one part that is engineering, and that is where you are hitting us, where we need to have good roads in our country such that people can use these roads safely. The first one I would want to try and define what a good road is. A good road is a road that can accommodate all types of road users, be it a driver, a pedestrian, a cyclist, a motorcyclist, and even in urban centers, the disabled. So when we say a road, a good road, such is a road with road line markings. That's what we define as a good road. So at the authority, what we are doing, we are tackling this in two folds, where we are engaging the engineers who are supposed to be doing these roads, trying to encourage them. As I told you, our law has just been passed, just 2 years. The LI is not even up. Right. So we are still in that collaborative mode, where we are collaborating with the road agency to give us good roads. Then another one we are doing is that we are advocating. We are using advocates to push more funding into road construction. And I'm sure you have heard about the dualization of the two major roads, where even the Minister of Roads and Highways himself spoke on it and said that was one of the things that they want to do. They want to dualize the N1 and then the N6. And these are the two major roads in Ghana that we have a lot of vehicular population on. These are the two roads that we record a lot of crashes on. And if we are able to complete the dualization of these two roads, it would bring drastically down head-on collisions, type of crashes on our roads. So yes, we are collaborating with the road agencies. We are also using advocates to push government to fix our roads.
Well, it's interesting that you bring that up. I know, for example, that stretch leading into the central region, Cape Coast and others, has also been one of the hotspots when it comes to accidents across the country. And at least I'm hoping that there will be some work directed at that end. I don't know whether you have any such information.
Yes, as I said, the roads ministry has shown that they want to a dualization of the N1. That is the road you are talking about is the N1.
Yeah.
It stretches from Aflao through to.
So it's going all the way to that end.
Yes, stretching from Aflao to Enugu. And as I said, we all heard the minister even came out to talk about it and said that in the year of roads, that is one of the roads that they are going to dualize. Then the N6, that is from Accra through Kumasi, through Teshiba, Tamale to Boga. This is the other road that they intend to do the dualization. But you know, these are major works that will take time. So I would urge all road users in the meantime, we take caution when we are using these roads because one, the vehicular traffic on this road is very high, and then we talk about speeds and speeds. The maximum speed you can go on these two roads that I have mentioned, apart from the section of the N1, that is the Semakra motorway, it's 90 kilometers per hour. But I want to believe that people do more than these speeds.
Right.
When speed limits are given for particular roads, it is given for purposes. It is given because of the environment that we find ourselves in. These roads are single carriage roads, meaning that you have one side, the oncoming vehicle also has the other side. If you go at higher speed, and there are a lot of towns along these roads, if you drive at higher speed, you realize that when you see an obstacle and you need to brake, your braking distance increases, thereby making it difficult for you to stop in time without hitting that hazard.
Right.
Then also, I would urge people to be patient. Sometimes I try to drive within the speed limits. I drive within the speed limits on these roads. And you realize that people who go on high speed, let's say they are going to Cape Coast or Takrady. When the person gets to Cape Coast or Takrady, you realize within 30 minutes, you who have been driving within the speed limit would also get to Takrady. So sometimes the living time saved is not that much for you to risk your life in such a way.
Right. And so a lot more sensitization is needed. But I want your take on this. I know that for regular road users, private vehicle owners, it might be difficult regulating their speed, apart from maybe using speed guns and, enforcing, punitive measures. But for those in public transport, I'm talking about those who operate commercially, how are we checking on them in terms of speed limiters? Now, this is a matter that has come to the fore time and again about limiting the speed of these operators. As far as I know, and I'm not trying to highlight this entity, but as far as I know, from what I've been told, it's only the STC that actually has these speed limiters so that their vehicles on an ordinary day cannot go beyond 80 kilometers per hour, so that once you hit 80, you can't go beyond that. How about the other entities? What are we doing to ensure that as they are on our roads, we have these limiters in them to save lives? We've been seeing a lot of these buses engaged in accidents as well.
Thank you very much. This is something that as an authority with its stakeholders, that is DVLA, the police and other road safety stakeholders, have looked at. And it is something that we think when it comes into play would help in the reduction of road traffic crashes. But the difficulty is we do not have garages in Ghana who are certified to install these limiters. So what DVLA is doing now is certifying and training people in the installation of these limiters and then certifying them. And then what the authority is also doing is we are coming up with some standards for transport operators. And as part of these standards, your vehicles should have speed limiters on them, especially those who fly interregional routes. You should have these speed limiters in there. So I'm sure when this certification procedure is done, and now we can tell people where to go and do these, then some grace will be given them and the enforcement would kick in. So this is something that as authorities we are looking at, and we think that as you write this, this is something that would help us. Now let's go to the private sector where you said that would be difficult. What we're coming for the private sector is that, as I told you, the police is going to automate their operations. And as part of their automation, we would have speed cameras on some major routes in Ghana. So these speed cameras are such that the police shouldn't be there. When you cross this speed camera at certain speeds which are higher than the limit you should be going on that stretch, this camera will pick you and the information sent to a back room. When the information is sent to a back room, it gives the vehicle, the location, the driver, and so as soon as you get into the information room, information is sent to your next checkpoint. Let's say if it takes you on the Bonsu Junction stretch. Now, if you are driving towards Kumasi, we know the next police checkpoint. Information is sent there. When you get there, you are parked off, and then the law will take its course. So that is something that is also coming up. That will be checking the speeds of private vehicles.
Okay.
And then, as I mentioned, for the commercial vehicles, we are going to implement the regulation on the speed limiters and logbooks. And what this is going to do is that it won't only check speed; it will also check fatigue, because these speed limiters that are going to be installed can show when you move from wherever you moved to. If you stop on the road, it will show. If you did not stop, it will show. So it will also check fatigue and speeding.
Mr. Asomani, let me take you back a few months, about 6 months ago in April. You made mention of this same thing that you're speaking of here. You spoke about the cameras, red light cameras, and all of that. 6 months down the line, we're still using the language of "we will." I know some of these cameras are on some stretches, but how long will it take till all the major stretches where a lot of these accidents are happening will get these cameras, so that private road users as well can also have something that addresses the situation and maybe acts as a disincentive for people to speed?
Okay, thank you. You see, when I spoke in April, we didn't have this. So these are the ones we're talking about are the surveillance cameras.
Right.
Which we are installing now. What the surveillance cameras does is that it allows the back room to see whatever is happening on the roads. And that is the first step towards the installation of the speed and red light cameras I spoke about.
Right.
So this is just the first step where we are now. When you want to embark on a project, you do it in phases so that you can be ironing out challenges as you go along. So the surveillance cameras have come. They are being installed. More will be installed. And then the next phase will see the speed and red light cameras. And as I said in April, I think I gave by the end of the year, we will see the first speed camera on Ghana's roads.
Can you share with us any of those stretches that you've identified to put these speed cameras on?
Unfortunately, where I am, I do not have the list at hand, but on the top of my head, I know that we would have some on the N1 and then the N6, sections of the N1 and then the N6.
Okay. A curious question here, and I've seen a number of, in fact, I have driven through a number of, intersections or areas where there are traffic lights which are non-functional. And this has gone on for a while, a week, 2 weeks, and I've been wondering why that is, because usually, I'm sure you'd agree with me, when you get to those stretches, people on the intersections, everyone wants to go, everyone wants to cross, and it often is a recipe for disaster. I'll tell you for a fact that this morning, I don't know whether it's on the back of the time, but usually when you're using the stretch connecting from UPSA coming towards the University of Ghana, that turn there, well, it doesn't function. It is non-functional. And you would see cars from both ends, those coming from the Adenta Medina area into the Legon area, and those entering that part of town or heading towards Kwabenya. All of them use that stretch, and the traffic lights are not functioning. When you come to Alajo, right before you connect to the main stretch coming towards this end, when it comes to the multimedia group, or heading towards Circle, it is same. And each time you get there, you see that everyone is, chock-a-block, trying to shove his or her way through. Which authority, so to speak? In the past, we've had discussions, and it is difficult to pinpoint which authority is in charge of, taking care of these problems. Which authority should be dealing with this, or agency, and how do we resolve them? Because they are also creating accidents on our roads, Mr. Asomani.
Thank you. I think this was brought to our notice some time ago, where we engaged the authorities involved, that is the Department of Urban Roads. And I know they are in the process of taking stock, and they are changing, I think they are changing some mechanisms when it comes to the traffic lights. So at the point where we discussed, they were taking stock of these spots that are not working and going to replace the components. But then I would also want to caution the public. You see, sometimes people steal some components from such things, such that, you know, we are a country. This is done for all of us to use. Then some miscreants go around to go and take such some components from it. In recent times, we all heard the news, even on our new interchange, the latest interchange.
Right, the crash barriers.
Yes, and the property where people are going around removing the crash barriers. Where do we want to go as a country? Let us try and be responsible citizens. Let us stop taking things that are done for the betterment of all. But I'm not saying that in this, because they are stealing, the government is does not want to replace this. But as I said, the Department of Urban Roads is taking stock of all these traffic lights are talking about, and the components that have been either removed or that are gotten spots. So they are taking stock of this and will be replaced soon. So very soon we'll see all our traffic lights coming back up. But let's try and be responsible citizens. If you see somebody doing something untoward, let us report them. If you know somebody who has been doing this, please report the person. If we all do not take this by our the food, we all not come together to tackle this, it would be very difficult for the authorities to tackle it, because the authorities cannot be there 24/7. And it is in the light of this that you realize that in the installation of these surveillance cameras, we have them as traffic signals, where we would now see if somebody comes around to take these components. So very soon, these things will be in the past, because I know citizens would help authorities in coming up with people who go and remove these components, and also our surveillance cameras will show us people who remove these components. Then another aspect is where, as drivers, we drive into these facilities. We drive into them and then they get spoiled and we leave. The law says that when you drive into such things, you need to report yourself. You know, why everybody has third-party insurance is so that when you are involved in such accidents, the third party, when we say third party, it means that not you, the other party, whatever is got fault, insurance will take over. So when you go and knock down these traffic lights and street lights, just report. When you report, your insurance company would pay for it, not you. Your insurance company would pay for it, unless you do not have a valid insurance certificate. But if you have a valid insurance certificate, you have a valid roadworthy certificate. If you have a valid driver's license, insurance will pay for it. And that is how we can be responsible citizens, such that people, where these things that are done for all of us to use, will stay in good shape all the time. So please, let us try, stop this stealing of components. When we crash into them, let us report so that the government can get your insurance company to fix it back for us. Then also, as citizens, when we see anybody doing that, we should report to the nearest police station so that if such people are apprehended and such things will be stopped. Then now when we get this light up, it will not go off again.
Right before I take your summary comments, Mr. Asomani, I just, this came to mind. As we talk about violations on our roads and all of that, there is a certain component when it comes to our licensing regime. And I know you are not with the DVLA, but I know you work hand in glove with them. You would notice that sometimes there is a lot of bullying on the roads, from big trucks to commercial drivers, some of them, especially the bus drivers, the trotro, as we've come to know them. The motorcycles have their own, scenarios. But I'd just like to find out, what is the NRSA doing in terms of aiding the DVLA when it comes to licensing, our licensing regime, to ensure that people who are on the road actually are fit for driving? Because a lot of people, some of the things you see them do on the road, are testament to the fact that they either haven't, undergone proper training when it comes to driving, or something is amiss somewhere. That, I feel, is a fundamental part of the problem. How are you targeting that to ensure that that also, helps curb the carnage on our roads?
Okay. I know for a fact that the DVLA has digitalized all their driver's records. And what this will do for us is that now, when you enter the COC of any license that you have, you get information on it. So if you have a fake license and then the police stops you and they enter your COC, they will see that it is fake. So this is something that the DVLA is bringing on board that would weave off fake licenses. Then now we come to those who have licenses but are still doing the things that you are talking on the roads. That is where the enforcement comes in. So now, as I said, with these surveillance cameras, we see all these things, and people are apprehended and prosecuted. With the red lights and then the speed enforcement cameras that are also coming up, you would have these. If you call the red light, it will take you. So all these things, when people come to realize that when I do these things, I am apprehended, arrested, they will stop. It is normal human nature. If you think you get away with something, you will do it. But if you know you won't get away with it, you will stop. So as I said, with time, all these mechanisms will come in place. Now we know about the insurance industry where everything is complete. So now you can just use your phone to check the insurance certificate of a vehicle just by using the vehicle number. So as I said, as soon as this 1-2 is completed, the insurance is complete. As soon as this 1-2 is completed, it will also come on board to add to the insurance. Then the vehicle data will come on board to add. Now we would have a digitized system where when you enter a vehicle number, you will know the status of its insurance, the status of its roadworthiness. If you enter the COC of a driving license, you know the status of it, whether it's valid or not, whether even that driver is supposed to be driving that class of vehicle he is driving, and the last time the driver was trained, if the person is a commercial driver, and the last time the person went into a refresher road safety education course.
Right.
So all this will come up, and I know you are going to ask me for timelines. As I told you, it is an ongoing process. It's to change a system, you can't change it drastically. It's an ongoing process. And most of these things have been done at the back door. Very soon we'll be outdooring these, and people will get to realize what it is about and what they can do on the road to help the authorities.
Mr. Asomani, right before you take leave of us, just before you go, I want you to do this for us. Now, I'll go back into the context of the discussion. 2,126 lives lost in road crashes between January and September. We are looking at some 11,659 people who have sustained various degrees of injury, apart from those who have passed on. And those have involved 11,585 accidents within the period. As you take leave of us, what would be your call to ordinary Ghanaians as they listen to you now? What would be your charge to all of us?
We should be responsible for our safety first, and we should ensure that when we are using the roads, we use them in a safe way. Then I would want to go into the statistics a little. You see, when you look at the statistics that you just put out, you realize that hitherto, these statistics, we would have had about 40% of these fatalities being pedestrians. But now we have about 42% of these fatalities being motorcycle riders.
True.
And why is this alarming? It's alarming because the maximum a motor can take is 2 people. So if they are leading in the fatalities, then you realize that it means that when you are on a motorbike and you are involved in a crash, the likelihood that it is going to be fatal, the likelihood that you are going to die is very high. So I would still continue to urge people, let us stop patronizing Okada. When the police stop them and you are a fare-paying passenger, please do not shy away from it. Do not say you are not. The more we continue to patronize these, the more it becomes difficult for the police to enforce it, because you need witnesses. When, let's say, if you are on an Okada and the police stops this Okada and ask you, are you a fair paying, but then you say no, it becomes difficult for the police to even prosecute whoever is using the ride. So let us stop patronizing this, so that when we stop patronizing it, it becomes less lucrative for people to go into that venture. Because it is giving us high number. I can't associate it to just Okada, but Okada has increased the number of motorcycles we have in the country. And this has also increased the number of fatalities involving motorcycle riders. And as a motorcycle rider, we know what we have to do. You have to be on your helmet. You have to follow road traffic regulations. Do not cross the red light. Do not ride against oncoming vehicles. I like one campaign being done at the multimedia, I think at Adom FM, one lady at Adom FM, who is running a campaign for motorcycle riders. And this is a campaign that we think is good. And as an authority, we support it. And we are going to do everything to make this campaign a success. Well, because motorcycle is going up, and we need to tackle this. But to end, I always say this in my interviews, that it is better to be patient on the road than to be a patient in the hospital. And it is better to be late for an appointment than to be called delayed. So let us all put this at the back of our minds when we are using the roads.
Ms. Asomani, thank you so much. Interesting note on which to end, that we should not patronize Okada. But this is the conversation we've had. Henry Asomani is actually Senior Manager Planning and Programs at the National Road Safety Authority. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for joining us. And coming up next, we're going to have a discussion on NGOs, the role they play, how we can get better out of them as we get into Social Watch. But right before we segue into that, let me just do this right before we go. A happy birthday wish to Nanaya Lipsy at Spintex. Nanaya Lipsy at Spintex. May the Lord bless you and your family. It's from Larry Razak, who is with our camera crew right here at the Multimedia Group. Do stay with us. There's more coming your way on Prime Morning.